There is a moment in every chase that doesn't make sense. It comes after the sprint has already begun, after muscles commit, after lungs expand, after survival reduces itself to one command: run. And yet, in the final seconds, just before impact, the deer stops. Not slows, not stumbles, stops. In the dry forests of the Indian subcontinent, where light fractures between shadow and dust, the predator is already moving long before it is seen. The Bengal tiger does not chase like others. It doesn't rely on endurance. It doesn't reveal itself through speed. Instead, it closes distance silently, reducing space until escape is no longer a strategy, only a reaction. And that reaction, in prey like the cheetal deer, should be predictable. Detection, explosion of movement, erratic escape. This sequence is ancient, hardwired, refined over millions of years. So when that sequence breaks, even for a second, it raises a deeper question. Why would evolution allow hesitation at the exact moment it matters most? At first glance, the answer seems simple. Fatigue, misjudgment, panic. But the pattern repeats too consistently. Across different encounters, different environments, different individuals, the same behavior appears. A deer, already aware of danger, already running, suddenly stops. Not slowly, not gradually, abruptly. As if something overrides the instinct to flee. To understand this, the chase must be slowed down. Not in speed, but in perception. Because what looks continuous to us is for the prey a sequence of decisions. Rapid, layered, constantly shifting. The Bengal tiger doesn't attack from a distance. It closes in quietly until it reaches a critical threshold, often less than 20 meters. At that point, endurance no longer matters. Speed alone isn't enough. Everything depends on timing. The cheetal deer must react within fractions of a second. Too early, and the predator adjusts, changes direction, recalculates. Too late, and the distance disappears completely. And somewhere within that narrow window, the sequence breaks. But there is a second layer to this interaction, one that isn't immediately visible. Prey animals don't just run. They calculate, constantly. Distance, angle, speed, obstacles, and most importantly, the predator's trajectory. So when the cheetal deer stops, it isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's recalibration. A sudden halt can force the Bengal tiger to commit too early, to reveal its direction, to break concealment, to lose uncertainty. In open terrain, this can work. A pause, followed by a sharp turn, can disrupt the attack. But in dense forest, everything changes. Visibility collapses, sound distorts, and the predator's approach is already optimized. Now that same strategy becomes a risk, because the information the deer is trying to gather arrives too late. And there's another factor, one deeper than behavior: the nervous system itself. Under extreme stress, mammals can enter a state known as tonic immobility, a temporary shutdown of movement. Not true paralysis, but a neurological override. In some species, this response helps. It reduces detection, mimics death, interrupts predation. But against a predator like a tiger, stillness doesn't remove the threat. It completes it. And yet, the cheetal deer does not choose this response. It is triggered. A cascade of signals floods the brain. Visual overload, distorted sound, adrenaline surging through the body. At a certain threshold, action begins to break apart. Multiple survival strategies collide. Run, freeze, turn, hide. And for a fraction of a second, none of them fully take over. This is where the moment appears. Not as a decision, but as a conflict. A brief interruption in the continuity of survival. But there is something more unsettling, because this behavior is not always a failure. In some cases, it works. There are moments where the deer halts, the Bengal tiger lunges, and the prey escapes at the last possible instant, using the predator's commitment against it. A gamble, high risk, occasionally high reward, which suggests something deeper. This isn't a flaw. It's part of the system. Because evolution doesn't remove risk, it redistributes it. Across individuals, across encounters, across time. For every failure, there may be a success. For every deer that stops and is taken, there may be another that stops and survives. But even this explanation leaves something unresolved. Because not all stops are the same. Some are so brief, they're almost invisible. Others last just long enough to erase any chance of escape. Too long to be strategy, too precise to be random. And in those moments, the behavior begins to resemble something else. Not calculation, not instinct, but interruption. As if under extreme pressure, the system itself begins to break. Because in the final seconds of a chase, what unfolds is not just physical. It is neurological, perceptual, temporal. The brain is no longer processing reality in real time. It compresses it, distorts it, reorders it. And that distortion may be the key. Because if the cheetal deer is not experiencing time the way we assume, then the moment it stops may not be a pause at all. It may be something else. A shift in perception where reaction and delay collapse into the same instant. And if that's true, then survival in the wild is not decided by speed or strength or even awareness, but by how an animal experiences time itself. And in the presence of a predator like the Bengal tiger, that experience may be altered completely. So the question is no longer why the deer stops, but what is happening inside its mind in the exact moment the world slows down, just before everything ends. There is a tendency to imagine the final seconds of a hunt as clean, a straight line between pursuit and capture. But inside the mind of the prey, nothing is linear. When a cheetal deer detects a predator, the signal does not follow a single path. It splits. One pathway moves fast, through ancient neural circuits built for immediate reaction. The other moves slower, through regions responsible for interpretation, prediction, and spatial awareness. Under normal conditions, these systems work together. But under extreme threat, they begin to compete. The first system to destabilize is vision. At close range, the approach of a Bengal tiger is not perceived as smooth motion. It fragments, edges blur, depth collapses, movement becomes uncertain. What appears to us as a clear advancing predator may to the deer break apart. A leap not fully seen, a direction not fully understood. At the same time, the auditory system begins to fail. In dense forest, sound does not travel cleanly. It reflects, it scatters, it arrives out of sequence. The tiger's movement may seem closer or farther than it truly is. The brain tries to compensate, to predict where the predator should be. But prediction requires stability. And in this moment, stability is gone. What remains is uncertainty. And in that uncertainty, the system begins to lose coherence. This is where time begins to change. Not physically, but perceptually. Under extreme stress, mammals can experience something known as time dilation. The internal clock accelerates. External events appear to slow down. Milliseconds stretch. Moments expand, almost into something usable. It sounds like an advantage. More time to react, more time to decide. But that assumes the system stays coherent. In reality, it doesn't. As processing speeds increase, signals begin to overload the brain. Information arrives faster than it can be understood. It accumulates but doesn't align. And when that saturation point is reached, action begins to collapse. The cheetal deer does not experience a single clear choice. It experiences multiple realities at once. The Bengal tiger is to the left, no, to the right, closer, farther, still hidden, already attacking. Each possibility demands a different response. Turn, leap, stop, accelerate. But the body cannot execute all of them. And for a fraction of a second, it executes none. And that is the moment. From the outside, it looks like stillness. From the inside, it is overload. But there is another layer. Less about perception and more about prediction. Prey animals don't just react to where a predator is. They react to where it will be. This predictive model is essential. Without it, escape would always lag behind attack. But prediction depends on pattern. And the Bengal tiger does not behave like most predators. It doesn't rely on prolonged pursuit. It doesn't reveal rhythm. Instead, it compresses the entire chase into a single burst. Acceleration, followed by a leap. For the cheetal deer, this creates a problem. There isn't enough time to refine the prediction. The moment the tiger commits, the model collapses. And when prediction fails, reaction alone is not fast enough. This is where the stop changes meaning. It is no longer hesitation. It becomes a reset, a forced interruption in a system that can no longer keep up. And in rare cases, that reset works. The tiger commits to a trajectory based on the deer's previous movement. The deer halts, then pivots sharply. The predator overshoots. For a fraction of a second, distance returns. Barely, but enough. But these outcomes are exceptions. Because the same mechanism that allows escape also creates failure. There is one final factor, often overlooked: energy. A full sprint is expensive. For a prey animal like the cheetal deer, especially in hot, resource-limited environments, continuous escape is not sustainable. The body must decide almost instantly when to conserve and when to spend everything. In long chases, this balance can adjust. But in an ambush, there is no time. The system must choose, commit fully or reassess. And the stop may be that reassessment. A brief suspension of output to redirect energy, to choose a more efficient escape path. But again, this only works if timing is exact. And timing here is not just physical, it is neurological, perceptual. It depends on whether the brain can align incoming signals, prediction, and action. within a window that may last less than a second. When it succeeds, the deer disappears back into the forest. The Bengal tiger misses. The system holds. But when it... What makes this unsettling is not the outcome. Predation is expected. It is fundamental. What unsettles is the mechanism. That survival, at its most critical point, can depend on a moment where the body does the opposite of what it should. To run is obvious. To stop is not. And yet, within that contradiction lies something deeper. Because survival is not about always making the correct decision. It is about making decisions fast enough, under conditions where clarity no longer exists. The cheetal deer does not stop because it chooses risk. It stops because in that instant, the systems meant to protect it collide. Instinct, perception, prediction. And in that collision, there is a gap. A fraction of a second where everything falls out of sync. For the Bengal tiger, that gap is everything. And for the prey, it is the difference between continuation and absence. Because in the wild, survival is not continuous. It is a series of moments, each one defined by timing, so precise that even a single interruption can end it.